song to play because people don't realize, oh, I didn't know that Keely Smith did that. Just like Elvis and Suspicious Minds.
Yeah, but then the Fifth Dimension with Marilyn McCool that goes #1 and goes platinum.
Right.
Explain that one, you know?
Well, it's just the way sometimes this timing. And like Mark James, who I believe wrote Suspicious Minds, did these songs before Elvis in 1967. And then, of course, Elvis did it in '69. It was the #1 song for him.
That went crazy.
And Scott Roeder, our next guest that we're going to talk to, Dawn's going to stick around. It's kind of like Merv Griffin, where everybody's on the couch.
Yeah.
Just kind of relaxing. Scott's looking at some of the Frank Zappa.
I know, really cool stuff you have in here, Ray.
Scott, we have so much stuff, it is overwhelming.
It's insane.
If you look behind you, you can see literally 10,000 albums.
Wow. Those things move. I mean, it's a whole
That
mood
is
back
fantastic. What a collection, Ray.
They move in many ways. Scott Roeder. Scott's been a friend of mine for a long time, and Scott and I met at the Lakewood YMCA back in the 90s, and I helped coach his kids in baseball when they were at Lakewood High School. But really, the reason Scott is here today is to talk about crime reconstruction. Scott is an expert at that. He does a tremendous job. He's been on many television programs, recently on the Oxygen Network, dealing with the smiley face killer. Scott, let's expound on that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was brought in by these two retired New York City detectives, a gentleman by the name of Kevin Gannon and his colleagues, who have been investigating the smiley face killers, what they believe is a group of serial killers, or an individual, most likely a group, that have been abducting men in the United States on the East Coast, everywhere from upstate New York to southern Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina. They've documented well over dozens and dozens of instances that fit this particular profile. Each one of these victims, they all have a very, very similar type to them. They're all Caucasian males between the ages of 18 and 30 years old. All no criminal background of any kind, really.
Like a psychopath.
Really, yeah. I mean,
There's no signs, outward signs of this kind of egregious behavior. So all of a sudden, they're kind of under the radar. I hate to use that word. I can't think of anything better. They kind of hide themselves in plain sight.
They really do, and it's interesting because last night I just so happened to be watching Netflix, and I was watching the Bundy tapes. I don't know if you've seen that, but really fascinating when most people think of killers as these people that are crazy on drugs and they're out there, going back to how it's sensationalized, or the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run, which we'll get into. We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, they had going back to the Mad Butcher, I had this old Plain Dealer article, Cleveland Plain Dealer article from the Great Depression, or the Cleveland Press possibly back then. I think it was still the Plain Dealer.
No, well, I mean, there was the Press, there was the Cleveland News, and the Plain Dealer's always been there.
Okay, so it was definitely the Plain Dealer. But they had this sketch drawing of the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run back during the Great Depression, and it was literally a cartoon character of a maniacal, evil monster wielding a knife, and that kind of has fit, the general public's attitude of, what is a killer? These crazy people. But as in Ted Bundy and as in a lot of serial killers, these are people that hide in plain. Yeah, I mean, he was a child performer. I mean,
he was a clown.
Yeah,
it's frightening. It's absolutely just.
I've never liked clowns since then, right? I mean, I never miss an opportunity to punch a clown in the face. I'm sorry. This is exact opposite of Dawn. The good stuff. This is the bad stuff.
Well,
let's not look at it as the bad stuff. Let's look at it as what you're trying to do is uncover things to stop these people.
Right.
So
and closure for these families would be huge.
So that's not bad. That's actually good.
You're right. But in the smiley face killers, getting back to the smiley face killers, in each of the victims, they're found near a body of water, which is one of the other things that link them together. And a lot of these killings have been ruled accidental drownings or suicides. And in each one of the bodies, there is a smiley face found in graffiti near the body, whether it's on a bridge or on a rock or on a wall.
Well, it's a calling card.
Yeah, it's a calling card. I think it begs itself toward, possibly some copycat stuff, but at the same time, it's just this ironic thing to put near, a body that's been, killed or dumped or staged to be found. It goes back to, some things you've seen in the movies over the years where, kind of these ironic kind of calling cards. But in any event, I work on a particular case regarding the death of Tommy Booth. There's a 24-year-old gentleman, lives in the suburb of Philadelphia, and he goes out with his friends one night. It's a normal night, no special occasion or anything like that, and they're out till 2 o'clock in the morning at this hip hop club, listening to music and dancing with girls and doing whatever they're doing. And 2 o'clock in the morning, they can't find their friend Tommy, and we actually have him on videotape, in the club, so we know he was there, but nobody saw him leave, and he wasn't found again for almost 3 weeks. When he is found, mind you, his parents are freaking out. They're forming search parties. The people are they're going on the news. They're taking out articles. They're trying to find their son. There's no reason that they thought he could have been missing, or gone voluntarily. But
so why would he just automatically just leave
Right.
and leave no trace of where he's going?
Exactly.
So you're thinking, there's got to be foul. What could it possibly be?
Right, exactly. Or maybe he was involved in something they didn't know about. No, we don't know.
Right.
But in any event, he's found almost 2.5 weeks later, face down in 2 inches of water in a creek, which is directly behind the bar where he was last seen. And on the back of the restaurant, or the back of the bar, it's kind of in a strip mall outside of Philadelphia. In the back of literally on the back of the building itself,
Right.
is a graffiti smiley face.
Now,
So
let me ask you this.
yeah, go ahead.
The different, because these happened in different places in the country.
Yeah.
Now, the one in Chicago, the people in Philadelphia, how would they have heard of that? I mean, it would have been difficult for them to know all the details of that. So that's why I don't think it's a copycat.
Well, you're right. It is possible that it could not be a copycat. People that do these kinds of things are usually pretty smart people, pretty well-researched people that are looking to get away with it. Yeah, meticulous. Because if you're going to pull off a random crime, that's not that's something you can plan, right? That's why random crimes and serial killers are so difficult to catch, because they have no direct link to the victim. 90% of all people that get killed in the United States are killed by somebody they know. It's usually crimes of passion. Husbands and wives, family members, relatives, so on and so forth. There's always a link. So serial killers are difficult to catch because there's no direct link to the victim themselves, so the evidence is difficult. So one of the problems that we had in this case, and that Kevin Gannon and his team have had, is that a lot of these people who have died were ruled accidental drownings and homicide. So our goal, going back later, is to try to convince law enforcement, in this particular case, the police department and the county coroner, to look at the evidence that we found in investigating the case with fresh eyes and overturn their rulings of accidental death to a homicide, so that they can actively go out there and search for who abducted and killed Tommy Booth.
What they found and then what you found, what's the difference? Like, let's take the one in Philadelphia here.
Sure.
Okay, now the initial police report obviously listed things that they found on the body or near the body, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what did you find that the police in Philadelphia didn't?
Well, we found the same things. That's the thing. But
Okay.
our interpretation
All right.
of
It's
it
like
was
water in the
scientific.
lungs shouldn't have been there. Isn't that what they said?
Well, there
about
should
the
be.
network or
Well,
vice versa?
well, there should have been water in the lungs.
Exactly.
There
and
was not.
Wasn't, so
There
And
was
there
not.
wasn't.
Things
That
like-
means that he was
Wasn't that what they
murdered
said?
and then put in the water.
Well, that's correct. I mean, if you're going to, there's a couple different ways you can drown, right? So, one of the most typical ways is you go into the water and you're conscious, and if you go into the water and you're conscious, you're going to be swallowing the water, right? And then you'll definitely have water in your lungs. Now, if you go into the water and you're unconscious, you're going to have minimal amounts of water in your lungs, but that means that you didn't drown, right? That means you were dead before you went into the water, right? So there was no lot of water in his lungs. That was the first thing that we looked at. Okay, maybe he didn't drown. Okay, but we wanted to look even further, and I think the other thing was about time of death. There's a lot of controversy about this, but I talked to many forensic pathologists. Now, after almost 2 weeks, or after two weeks, almost 3 weeks,
There's level of decomposition.
there should be a substantial amount of decomposition, but even more so than decomposition was the rigor mortis, right? So rigor mortis sets into your body after you die somewhere between 2 to 4 hours.
Right.
And it stays fixed up until, at maximum, 36 hours. And then the body will release. And all rigor mortis is your muscles kind of tensing up. It's part of the decomposition process.
Right.
And then after rigor mortis, the body should start to decompose. Now,
It'll do it faster if it's warm up.
true, and it'll be slower if it's cold out. But that does not affect rigor mortis. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Sirleck on the program, agreed with me wholeheartedly. He agreed with my findings wholeheartedly. I get a lot of criticism. Well, how can you do this, Scott? You're not a forensic pathologist. I've worked on hundreds and hundreds of cases involving how people die, right? That's exactly what I do for a living.
Well, you reconstruct the crime.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we
so
reconstruct how, and I've reviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of autopsy reports, whether it's drowning victims, burning victims, shot by gunfire, car accident, whatever it might be. I know that, and it's empirical evidence. You can look it up in a medical book. You know how long it takes for rigor mortis. Now, did the cold weather extend the rigor mortis? Maybe a little bit here and there. But there's other environmental things with regard to this case that are just off the map, not consistent with any kind of an accident.
For example?
There was a search party with trained cadaver dogs searching the area of the creek the day before he was found. They couldn't find anything.
So in other words, you're telling me that he probably was dumped there afterwards.
Yes, absolutely. He was definitely dumped there. Matter of fact, there are signs that the police just ignored. And I don't want to blame it on the police so much.
Why don't we just say they possibly overlooked something?
Yes, yeah. They did not interpret it in the way I would have interpreted it. But then again, I have the benefit of armchair quarterbacking this case and not doing it live, right? And so when the body was found, there were clear drag marks, I think, where the body was dragged in this soft clay kind of mud down toward into the creek. And then also, I thought it was extremely bizarre, there were these 2 sticks that were placed, I thought they were deliberately placed between his legs and under his armpits. These are not naturally evolving sticks. I was in that creek. I was hip deep in that creek. I fell into that creek. There are no sticks and plant life that's coming up out of this creek. This is a saltwater creek.
Okay.
And there's a lot of brush around the edges, but there's nothing coming up from underneath.
He wanted that body to be found?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
That's the maniacal part.
It was a staged.
Right.
It was a staged recovery.
So he was like throwing this in the authorities' face.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, they put him there to be found.
And there was no particular reason that he was actually, it was just random, right?
I think it was random, but the family, there was some suspicion, and I didn't know about this actually until I saw the show on Saturday. On Saturday was that he had some fearful things going on. He might have been involved with some people that were running guns,
Okay.
selling illegal
So-
guns. I don't know. I didn't know this, but a lot of that stuff is not what I get concerned with in my job. You know, because my job is about the physical and the forensic evidence.
Facts.
Yeah,
Facts, just the facts.
yeah.
Okay, so what was your final conclusion of all this? What was your analysis? How did you present this?
Well, I presented my findings to Chief of Police Scott Williger, and he was not too pleased. And if you go back and look at the episode, which you can find in the Oxygen app on your smartphone, or you can tune into any of your local cable providers. I think Oxygen is free on free cable TV. I gave a presentation to Captain Williger about my findings. He was not happy at all because a very rigid guy, nice guy, but kind of guy who's got a Donald Trump bobblehead on his desk. And
Let's not go there yet. We can't mention that, sir.
oh, I'm sorry. Is it too soon?
No, we can't talk politics.
Politics.
Okay.
Let's just mention it. Let's move on.
We'll cut that. It's not a podcast. So in any event, a very rigid individual, and I knew he was going to be somewhat hesitant to our findings, and he was. He was very hesitant. But anyway, my findings were this: that Tommy Booth did not die of drowning. Tommy Booth did not die in that creek, and that he was we don't know where he was, we don't know who took him, but he died from some other cause, which we still haven't been able to figure out what his cause of death is. And then after he died, approximately 24 hours before he was recovered, he was dumped in that creek. And I think that is a fact. All of those things are facts, and I think I've proven those to be facts.
Let me ask you this question. How was the toxicology report?
The toxicology report for Tommy was, he had alcohol in his system.
Not enough, though?
Not enough to make him, be unconscious, but that doesn't even matter to the extent of, the preservation of the body and rigor mortis and nobody finding him there the day before and so on and so forth. I mean, he was at a club drinking until 2 o'clock in the morning, so he's going to have some alcohol in his system.
Somebody
for
could
sure.
argue the fact that, this is far-fetched, that he could have had some kind of aneurysm or something like that and passed out. That which I doubt, but I'm saying that could...
You can make those arguments. I mean, anything is one thing that I've learned, and one of my mentors and good friends, Dr. Henry Lee, taught me is, there's no impossibilities. Anything's possible, but that's not what we do. We're not talking about possible. We talk about probabilities within a scientific certainty, and so anything's possible. People can convince themselves of a lot of different truths, of their alternative truths, but there's only one certain set of facts.
Right. You're listening to WCSB Cleveland. We don't have a lot of time, Scott, but let's go into the Kingsbury Run.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Well, I'm doing a documentary currently. I did a documentary about 10 years ago called Elliot Ness, the Cleveland Years, The Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. And it's the most famous, one of the first documented serial killer cases here in the United States.
Right.
Elliot Ness, after taking down Al Capone and his empire in Chicago, he
Right.
comes to Cleveland, and his goal was to make it safer. He installed traffic lights and parking meters. He modernized the police force. Cleveland went from the nation's most dangerous city,
Really?
and in 2 years, got the National Safety Award. And right at this time, the Great Depression hit. And Cleveland was the very first city to go bankrupt during the Great Depression. And as a result of that, Cleveland had one of the first and largest Hoovervilles, shanty villages of all these people who just went overnight bankrupt. And so I think one estimate was of 20,000 people were living in the area currently occupied by the steel plant.
Republic Steel.
By Republic Steel. That area right there was a Hooverville, was a shanty shack town. And that is where the killer was abducting his victims.
He felt that probably there was an area where nobody's going to even care about these people.
Yeah.
I can take whatever I want, nobody will follow up on it.
Yeah, because these people were, these aren't addresses. These people weren't collecting mail. These people had lost everything. And in total desperation, families have been fractured overnight. And so these are the perfect place to grab these victims. Yeah.
Scott Rudder, our special guest, and of course we've had the lovely and talented Dawn Kendrick here. Dawn and Scott, we have a little time left, but I wanted to say on behalf of our audience, thank you both for being here.
My pleasure.
Mine too.
Well, I'm thinking of Scott, and we go way back like a week. But
It's been a great week, though.
Again, we met
It
from
does.
Ray, right from the weekend. But what occurs to me, and I'm listening to you speak again, is that your business, your livelihood, is the science of it all, and the recreating the scene and stuff. But how much are you constantly faced with your own mortality? Like, and holy God, the randomness of these
Sure.
murders, and then like we talked about before, how you leave that kind of thing at work and not bring it home. I can't even imagine I would sleep at night doing what you do.
Sleeping is difficult from time to time. I'm not saying that it hasn't affected me. I'm very, very conscious of my mortality. But I think, the positive part about that is it makes you appreciate, that you are alive.
The gratitude, we talked
Yeah.
about that.
Right.
Yeah.
We can go back to that.
You could look at it two different ways, right? You could look at it like, the world is evil and people are out to get you on every corner. Or you could look at it like, I'm really lucky. I have people that love me. I have children that are healthy and successful. I have, family. My parents are still alive and doing great. Hi, Mom and Dad. And, yeah, I told them that my mom and dad definitely wanted to come and listen today. And I'm telling my dad, don't get up on the roof. Hire a kid down the neighborhood. Don't do it, Dad. It's not worth
try
it.
this at
I don't want to
home.
go up on my own.
Well, he's 78 years old, and he's just one of those guys that just wants to do everything on his own. God bless him. He's tough old German guy from Cleveland, Ohio. But anyway, no, I'm grateful. To answer your question, I think it makes me wary and skeptical about a lot of different things in the world, but at the same time, I'm grateful for my health and my life.
And the reward for getting closure for the families, I imagine.
I've had some really amazing things that have happened as a result of my job. In fact, just recently, we represented a guy, I worked on a case to the reconstruction, represented a guy by the name of Crosby out of Chicago. And he was a victim of this horrible abuse, and I won't get into the details too much of it, but he survived. And as a result of our efforts in reconstruction and so forth, we were able to get him and his family this $1.5 million settlement and an apology. And this is something that's going to help him kind of reform his life. And we couldn't be happier. He's the nicest guy in the world. And just a victim of this horrible situation. But through our efforts, we made his life a little better. And hopefully he is going to take that and pass that down the line and make other people's lives better, which I'm pretty sure he will.
Do you have any cases that ultimately helped exonerate someone who might have been falsely charged?
Yeah, we've done several of those.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's this case up in Long Island, New York. The actual case name will come to me, but it was this young man, 18 years old at the time, living with his mother and father, and again, his parents were, horribly bludgeoned and stabbed to death in their home. It was a very wealthy home in Long Island. He was having problems as a kid, kind of, emotional problems and things, and he was compelled by the law enforcement at the time, this is going back 20 years ago, to confess to killing his own parents.
Oh,
and
they coerced him.
Yeah, they coerced him to admit to killing his own parents, and he was convicted and went to jail. And then I worked with the Innocence Project and Barry Scheck, who's one of the best lawyers I've ever met.
Yeah.
And we did this reconstruction, and through not just my effort, but dozens and dozens of people. And this is all voluntary work. When you work for the Innocence Project, we don't get paid for this stuff. You volunteer your services for the purposes of justice, right? You're trying to right some wrongs. And anyway, long story short, he gets out of jail. He's found not just not guilty, he's found innocent.
Wow.
Which is a huge legal standard.
Sure.
And then
Yeah.
that opened up him to be able to file a wrongful prosecution lawsuit He was awarded
X amount of dollars.
yeah,
X amount of dollars.
X amount of dollars. I don't know exactly what the number was, but a lot of money. And ultimately, this kid ended up going to law school and is now a practicing lawyer in New York City, fighting for the rights of, and now he's a pro bono legal advocate fighting for wrongfully accused people.
Wow.
So,
Scott, do you have a website where people can go and just read about your story?
yeah, absolutely. You can go to evidence-room.net. Evidence-room.net, or you can, go onto YouTube and Google Evidence Room, and I've got a lot of animations and videos and reconstructions.
That's cool
up
stuff.
there.
You showed me that at the podcast. We'll
Yeah.
be able to put it up on the screen. When you see Scott's reconstruction in animated form, it really, really makes sense, because there's a whole bunch of other cases that we haven't got into that really were eye-opening. So I think when you see it like that, you get a better perspective of what's going on.
Well, you're absolutely. That's one of the reasons when I started my company in 2002, it was more than just, wanting to go out there and do something on my own. I wanted to tie these visual presentations, whether it's a physical science experiment, whether it's a computer animation, tie it to the actual evidence in a case, so that we can, really have this foundation to tactilely educate a jury as to what the facts of a case are, because it's so confusing sometimes when you're sitting on a jury and you have these lawyers and they're talking their legal jargon and so forth.
They obfuscate sometimes, and they just try to send you a different direction, and they try to make things very confusing. By the way, you're listening to WCSB Cleveland. That's a place where nothing is confusing.
Well, as we all know, being a lawyer is they're advocating for a particular point of view, right?
Course, yeah.
So whether the evidence is in their favor or not in their favor,
Right.
they're still going to argue their point, because that's what their job is. But my job is not to advocate. I don't get paid more if you win. I don't get paid less if you lose, although there'll be some lawyers out there that would argue with you about that. But I get paid the same no matter what.
Your job is to dig up the facts and
Right.
find out exactly how this particular situation happened. That's why they're hiring you,
Right.
to reconstruct the crime so they find out the truth.
Right, to be a truly independent expert witness, to reconstruct it based on the physical and the forensic evidence and the facts of the case. And that's what we pride ourselves on, because, at the end of the day, we are looking for the truth.
And you can certainly, in your case, you can handle the truth.
I can't handle the truth.
Pretty good, though.
That is great, yeah. Thank you. He served that one up.
Man.
Don has covered a lot of stuff, too. Don, do you have any more questions for Scott you'd like to add here?
I usually have a ton of questions. I told when I didn't realize you were going to be on a podcast, and I was fascinated
Yeah, I was.
by. Can you talk about the Oscar Pistorius?
Sure, we can talk about Oscar.
That's,
Yeah.
Actually, let me explain to our audience. The armchair athlete, Dan, he's given us an extra 10 minutes. So.
Excellent.
And Dan has a great sports program called the Armchair Athlete. So Dan's a good friend of mine, and he was on the podcast during the football season. So anyway, Dan's given us a little more time. So let's talk about Oscar.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I was I was hired to do a shooting scene reconstruction for the South African Olympic Paralympian athlete Oscar Pistorius. I didn't know who Oscar Pistorius was before I got hired on this case. I don't follow the Olympics that closely, and I certainly don't follow the Paralympics that
He was
closely.
the first Paralympic athlete to compete
compete
in the
in the real
Olympics.
one.
That's great.
Right.
Yeah, he was, and it really it was amazing at the time, because this is when the technology of like the bionic legs and prosthetics have really just started to hit the scene. Now it's much more prevalent. You see a lot of these people that are getting fitted, war veterans and so on, getting fitted, and it's really a miracle of science and technology that these people who've lost their legs, whether through an accident or through birth or whatever, are now able to walk and run faster than an able-bodied individual. You would think these people are even super able now in some instances.
Do we know how fast he actually ran?
That I'm sure we could look that up.
Yeah, I guess the fastest human being can run like 20 miles an hour.
That's Usain Bolt, right?
I would imagine.
I would think.
Usain Bolt was probably like that, yeah.
Yeah.
20
So
miles an hour. Is that right?
I don't know.
I think
don't
so.
know.
It sounds pretty close.
It
Yeah.
sounds maybe it's
I'm looking it
Miles
up.
an
Or is that a
hour.
cheetah? No.
No, I think cheetahs can run 28 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about the fastest human
Yeah.
being.
Right.
Like an all-out sprint.
Yeah, that would be
Fastest.
Usain Bolt for sure.
Yeah, I could probably do, I don't know, maybe
Run.
my heyday when I was running every day, maybe 13 miles an hour is my fastest. I think maybe I can do that. I don't
Yeah.
know. Not anymore, but at one time I was pretty fast. I mean, at one time.
Right.
I'm old now.
Run, Ray, run!
So it
My
was-
good friend. Sorry. Back to movie life.
So it was on Valentine's Day. I guess what 20.
Humans could perhaps run as fast as 40 miles per hour. There's a
40?
study that suggests that.
40.
Usain Bolt ran 28 miles per hour in a 100-meter sprint.
What?
28 for Usain Bolt.
20. Well,
Wow.
he's of course the exception.
Yeah.
He's like a rocket. Gone.
I've never seen a man run that fast.
Unbelievable.
Except when I run to the dinner table.
Well,
Sorry. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Myself and one of my employees, Philip McCloskey, and then also I chose to bring with me one of Cleveland's foremost criminal defense attorneys, Marcus Sidoti. Brought him both as a criminal liaison to help me with some of the criminal defense, and also brought him kind of as a bodyguard. Because I wasn't really sure of what my safety was going to be like when I was there. So we landed in Johannesburg, and immediately met with all kinds of paparazzi, and customs was really messing with us because they knew who we are, because it was kind of billed when we landed on the ground. Where I didn't even know this, but I was on the cover of In Touch magazine with the South Africa version or the Africa edition with celebrities and so on, because they're like the dream team coming from America to work and represent South Africa.
And that's let's get our audience to understand this. South Africa is a very different place than America.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Of course, it's at the bottom of the continent. And by the way, Africa's got 53 different countries in it. But South Africa, in and of itself, is a very strange place. They have 3 capital cities,
Yeah.
which is weird. But the way people live there, it's dangerous.
Well, it's very dangerous. I was there post-apartheid, obviously, and Nelson Mandela was kind of on his deathbed at the time. He hadn't quite passed. I think he passed just shortly after. And the white South Africans still very much in charge, even though they're not in charge politically. They still own all the land and so forth. And it's an odd place to be in that you're living behind a 12-foot brick wall with a 5-foot electrified fence, and it's not to keep the lions out, although you can hear the lions at night when you go to bed. It's very dangerous. I wasn't allowed to go outside of our compound without a bodyguard, not even to the mall,
They have malls there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's like Johannesburg is a big, beautiful city, kind of like Chicago. Cape Town is, kind of like San Francisco. They have live music and malls, but you have to know the area. You have to be a local. Going to Johannesburg at the time was a little dodgy as an American, because then you're really a mark for being abducted or killed and robbed and so forth. It's a big problem. So in any event, so we go there. We meet with the team, and ultimately, Oscar's version of the events was that. He thought somebody had broken into his house in the middle of the night, and then Oscar thought that he was kind of blocking this guy in a bathroom,
Right.
And he shot through a closed bathroom door. And unbeknownst to him, a lot of people don't believe this. This is what the whole controversy of the case is.
Right.
Is it turned out that it was his model, beautiful girlfriend, Reva Steenkamp, hiding in the bathroom, who got shot. And so ultimately, we did a reconstruction. We were able to determine that Oscar's story that he gave was consistent with all the physical and the forensic evidence, and all the experts agreed with us. And the prosecution's case was purely circumstantial, that it was some sort of a vengeful, purposeful killing. In any event, we did a wonderful reconstruction, and I think we proved that that what his version is was certainly consistent. Now, Oscar was convicted, was found not guilty of murder at the trial, but he was found guilty of culpable homicide, which is like manslaughter, and was sentenced to house arrest for about a year. Now, because this is not in the United States, the government appealed the verdict and found him guilty of murder on appeal, and then sentenced him to jail. And then when he was about to get out of jail after a couple of years, they re-sentenced him again to even more jail time. So, I'm not sure if he's ever going to get out of jail. This has ruined his whole life, and obviously the lives of a lot of people have been, horribly affected by this case.
When you see the computer animation, you realize that really there could have been a lot more at stake than what you would assume. That when you're standing on the other side of the door, like you showed that.
Yeah.
If you were him and you had that split second, so it helps a lot, like you say, to bring that kind of a version of what happened in seconds, and let not in Africa, not the jury, but people who are going to make the decision see it. It was fascinating to me.
Yeah, great stuff. Scott, once again, give your website out, please.
Sure. You can, if you want to find more about the Evidence Room, you can go to evidence-room.net.
And Dawn?
Thegoodstuffbydawn.com. Thank you. You let me say that like 5 times, so that's good. But he's under construction, so be patient if you would.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of everybody here at WCSB, thank you, both of you. You were fantastic. Cindy, thank you as well.
Oh, sure.
And,
Anytime.
We'll be back, of course, next week with more fun, more excitement, more great music. And if you would like to listen to this show again or any part of other shows, you can go to raycarram.com. There's a lot of interviews up on YouTube as well, so you can check that out.
Yeah, and this will be up later today.
Yeah, and all the places that I'm doing busy during the week, so I can't say what they are, but if you'd like to find out where they are, you can check it out there. Website. Thanks again, folks. We'll see you soon.
Ray
We've
Carr.
been broadcasting live video on Facebook.
The Howard Stern of Cleveland, Ray Carr.
Howard Stern?
I don't know, maybe Howard Stern. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.